let's begin this. Now you may be asking what this is, but there is a lot to unpack. There's a lot to talk about here. And first, let's just go through this. This is a comic strip. A comic strip from a hit comic strip series named Garfield. Now Garfield, it's a very popular comic strip. But as I was reading this particular piece, something clicked within my brain. It clicked, it snapped. There is something more going on here, and the more you look at it, the more you process it, the more the pieces of the puzzle start to just fit perfectly together to create this truth. We're doing an audio check. And now, let's begin the first panel. It's Jon Arbuckle. He's looking at his newspaper. He's reading something. Something that is so important to this plot that you don't even understand. This singular thing changes all of this entire premise. Everything relies on this next moment where he feels the table beside him. He is looking for something. What he is looking for, we do not know. In this present time, it can be anything. It can be anyone. We don't know what Jon Arbuckle is looking for. This whole concept of not knowing is the key. Just move to the second panel. It says, and you see his thought bubble. Now where could my pipe be? Suddenly the whole narrative has changed. We know there's a pipe in this scenario. We know what he is looking for, and suddenly we are curious. What is going on? Why is it not there? There is something deeper behind this. And that's when it pans to the next episode. Like a god in stature, Garfield is sitting there with the pipe in his mouth on green flooring. Yes. He has the pipe. And a single word echoes through this entire thing. It's him simply saying the word Garfield, screaming it. With all of his hope and dreams, screaming it. The pipe has now been transferred. But when I first read this, it didn't click to me. So I read it again, and I read it again, and I read it again and again and again, 1,000 times. And once I had read this 1,000 times over, I looked back at the finer details and found something astonishing. If you look closely in this first panel, you see a shadow behind him. Now that is often considered to be the chair's shadow, but I believe it's something else. I believe that the chair's shadow is the simple shadow that is currently controlling the bottom. The shadow has a line directly down. That is the shadow of the chair. So what is the shadow of the squiggles? Some could say that's Jon Arbuckle's head. Some would say that. But if you look carefully, you see that part reflected already as a shadow on the back of the chair. There is something else here. There is someone else in this house. And the big thing that pulls everything I have just said together, The big moment that proves that there is also a third character in this story. That big moment simply is the fact that you look at the second panel. Look at the second panel. Is there a chair shadow? No. No, there's no chair shadow. And there's no squiggling. Meaning it could not have been Jon Arbuckle's head, because Jon Arbuckle would have had the shadow reappear in the next frame of the comic, and this changed my entire perspective on everything that was going on. And at this present moment, I could feel tension brewing. The theories were popping into my brain. Who was this mystery character? Who was this person? I needed to know. There had to be something that would tie it all together. And there was. If you look at the final panel, a name echoes in the corner: Jim Davis, the creator of the comic. Now, you know, being the creator of the comic, how could he be in the comic? I don't think that he is in the comic. If you read Jim Davis backwards, you get Savad Midge. And a quick Google search will show you Savad Midge. A man. He worked for a company. This Google search shows Savad Midge was a company. But I needed to know what kind of company. There was nothing on him in the company. I went to Wikipedia. I went to every single source of valuable information. Nothing would ever come across. I was well and truly stumped. There was nothing that proved that this company was doing anything. But then I found something. I found the year 1978. And now this year particularly was an interesting time because a new company showed up on the block. A new company. One that would strive for better equipment. Weapons. Military grade weaponry. I was now confused. Something was really happening. Something was happening behind the scenes. This military grade weaponry doesn't just hang out. It was all clicking in my head. Everything. It all drew back to the very first panel. What was he reading? Well, it was obvious now. He was reading the new official weapons that were being created by this company. And you may be saying, who was behind Jon Arbuckle? And we do not have all the pieces in place yet to answer that question. That is a question that only a genius scholar would be able to find out, and one that I would need millions and millions of days to figure out. I would need maybe I'm exaggerating, but I would need at least 5 years to crack this code. Luckily, I've been at this a long time. But let's take a quick look. This comic isn't only the housing of a multi-million-dollar weapons industry, it is also proof that perfection exists. If you look at it, the shadow angle line directly crosses down on the first paper in a diagonal section, then goes straight across. This shows the growth of the panels are growing into an immaculate moment that is crafting a potent finale. That finale being the full black wall covered in the shadow. Completing the shadow technique, and that shadow technique is one thing that I will never forget. But you may be thinking, how is this possible? And I was thinking that too. I thought of Jim Davis. I thought of what he was been working on to create these next 2 years, and then it clicked with me. He has been making Garfield comics for so many years. So many years that he was just now striving for something called perfection. A perfect comic. Something that would never be forgotten in the eyes of mere mortals. And this would happen with the pipe strip. Insane. It's crazy. Everything's about to change. But let's take a step back. A true step back. Let's examine this again. You look through it. What is the same thing that proves there is something here? If you look at this, and this blew my mind. Jon Arbuckle is looking straight ahead into the next panel. The next panel. Then, if you look at the ending, Garfield is looking to where it thinks another panel should be, but there is none there. This proves a timeline of events. The timeline goes as such. Jon Arbuckle signs up to become part of this industry for creating weapons. This weaponized industry completely reshaped his life. He's making millions of dollars. Millions and millions of dollars off these weapons. He's reading about new shipments. He's reading all of these things. A man is behind him. And this is what's insane. If you notice, a theory popped into my brain. This would change everything. This single theory completely changes the entirety of this comic strip. This theory changes everything that has ever existed. Something as crazy as this theory should not be possible, but it is. This is the moment where things began to clash into my brain that I never thought were possible. The moment had arrived to unveil it. Jon Arbuckle. What if Jon Arbuckle was never Jon Arbuckle? If you look closely at the panels. you look closely at these panels, you see what I see. A man creeping behind John. John quivering. He is not looking for a pipe. He is quivering. And you may be asking why he's quivering. It's because Jon Arbuckle knew his fate was due. He knew time had come to a stop for him. He had somehow messed up. Somewhere in those pages, everything would change. And it is all about to happen. And it is waiting for this moment, this big cliche. Everything is building and building and building and building. He knows there's someone behind him. There is someone behind Jon Arbuckle. And that person is Jon Arbuckle himself. Now you may be confused. How can Jon Arbuckle also be Jon Arbuckle? That doesn't make any sense. But you're incorrect. If you look at Jon Arbuckle for a moment in this first picture, you will notice something quite distinct. Something that I don't think many people would realize. Jon Arbuckle is holding it with one thumb, this singular thumb grip around the newspaper. This changes everything. Because we don't see that in the second panel. You'd think he'd still be holding on to it, not placing it on the ground like somebody had just taken out the old Jon Arbuckle and replaced it with a new one, because that old Jon Arbuckle failed the plans of the great company, and that company needed to execute him for his crimes. And then you may be asking, how does this relate to the pipe? They have to make a cover story. Why was he reaching at the table? Why was he trembling? He was searching for his pipe. And that's when we realize something insane. Garfield, he finishes off this entire piece of the puzzle, and this piece of the puzzle is Garfield, and Garfield is this piece of the puzzle, and everything is making sense in my mind that Garfield is the one that's behind it all. Garfield is the leader of the company, and the way that I know this for sure is the fact that he can smoke. Garfield being able to smoke will prove that he has access to money to buy the drugs to smoke. This money doesn't come from nowhere. Where does a cat get the money to buy something to set it alight? I know that Jon Arbuckle did not have the pipe already packed before he grabbed it, because otherwise there would have been more panels. There would have been more panels to him going to find a lighter, going to him find other pieces of things. And Garfield, he is sitting there. He has the mastermind of it all. He has been siphoning through Jon Arbuckles for years, and now it's all come to a close. Thank you, everyone. That is the first thing I wanted to say about this particular comic strip. I hope you all enjoyed. I will do another one of these again another time. We finish on 20 seconds. Thank you.